What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Monday, September 20th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Oh, and good news, guys. Make sure to stay tuned to the very end of this video because we removed the box that was popping up and blocking the lineup. So now you can see a full lineup using these picks that we made in this video if you stay to the very end. Okay, guys, we have a 7-game slate tonight. So let's take a look at the pitcher position. I like Freddie Peralta pitching against the St. Louis Cardinals. Freddie Peralta, he's only giving up a .605 OPS versus righties and a .416 OPS versus switch hitters. He's facing 7 righties and 2 switch hitters, so he's got good splits here tonight. And on top of that, the Cardinals have only hit 17 of his last 71 pitches. That's a .239 batting average. Freddie Peralta is $8,900 FanDuel salary, $300 more on DraftKings, projected at 33.2 fantasy points here tonight. He has an ERA of 2.57. His record is 9-4 on the season, pitching an average of 80 pitches per game. He's averaging 35 fantasy points per game, and he scored 49, 20, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Freddie Peralta here versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. I like Freddie Freeman with a 59% batting advantage over Humberto Mejia. Freddie Freeman is batting 30% better versus righty pitchers, batting a 1.082 OPS versus righties, and Humberto Mejia, he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, 29% worse than his other pitches, giving up a 1.303 OPS versus lefties. Now there's no at-bats versus Mejia yet, and Freddie Freeman is $4,000 FanDuel salary, $1,200 more on DraftKings, projected at 12.5 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 3, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Freddie Freeman here versus Humberto Mejia. I also like Trey Mancini with a 57% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Ranger Suarez. Trey Mancini is batting 24% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .916 OPS versus lefties, and Ranger Suarez, he pitches his worst ball by far to righty batters, 32% worse than his other pitches, giving up a 1.022 OPS versus righties. So there's no at-bats versus Suarez yet, but I like this pick because Trey Mancini is only $3,100 FanDuel salary and only $300 more on DraftKings. Projected at 11 fantasy points here tonight. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, and he recently just came back from injury and scored 17 and 0 fantasy points in the last 2 games. So I like Trey Mancini here versus Ranger Suarez.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I got a value play for you. I like Ramon Urias with a 35% batting advantage over that same low salary pitcher, Ranger Suarez. Ramon Urias is batting 3% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .893 OPS versus lefties, and Ranger Suarez, we know, pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, giving up a 1.022 OPS versus righties. So there's no at-bats versus Suarez yet, and I like this pick because Ramon Urias is only $2,200 FanDuel salary. He's $1,100 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 0, 3, and 6 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Ramon Urias here versus Ranger Suarez. Now I also like Eduardo Escobar, batting against a low salary pitcher, Jake Woodford. Eduardo Escobar is batting a .698 OPS versus righties, and Jake Woodford is giving up a .717 OPS versus switch hitters. Eduardo Escobar is 2 for 4 with a 1 OPS versus Woodford. He's $3,600 FanDuel salary, $1,500 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.5 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 22, 19, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Eduardo Escobar here versus Jake Woodford. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I like Austin Riley, batting against Humberto Mejia. Austin Riley bats 6% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .810 OPS versus righties, and Humberto Mejia is giving up a .919 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Mejia yet, and Austin Riley is $3,400 FanDuel salary, $900 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.6 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 9, 3, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Austin Riley here versus Humberto Mejia. Okay, I got another value play for you. I like Gio Urshela with a 69% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, AJ Alexy. Gio Urshela is batting 9% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .790 OPS versus righties, and AJ Alexy, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 61% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .750 OPS versus righties. So there's no at-bats versus Alexy yet, and Gio Urshela is only $2,400 FanDuel salary, only $500 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 22, 0, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Gio Urshela here versus AJ Alexy.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the shortstop position. I like Gleyber Torres with a 52% batting advantage over that same low-salary pitcher, AJ Alexy. So Gleyber Torres is batting a .678 OPS versus righties, and AJ Alexy is giving up a .750 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Alexi yet, and Gleyber Torres is 3,100 FanDuel salary, only 100 more on DraftKings, projected at 13.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 3, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Gleyber Torres here versus AJ Alexi. I also like Isaiah Keener-Falefa batting against Nestor Cortes. Isaiah Keener-Falefa bats 11% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .741 OPS versus lefties, and Nestor Cortes, he's giving up a 1.010 OPS versus righties. Isaiah Keener-Falefa is 1-for-1 with a 2 OPS versus Cortes. He's only 2,900 FanDuel salary, 700 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.7 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 28, 6, and 6 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Isaiah Keener-Falefa here versus Nestor Cortes. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. My home run hitter, my dong of the day, I like Giancarlo Stanton with a 69% batting advantage over that low salary pitcher, AJ Alexi. Giancarlo Stanton bats 8% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .884 OPS versus righties, and AJ Alexi is giving up a .750 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Alexi yet, and Giancarlo Stanton is 3,900 FanDuel salary, 400 more on DraftKings, projected at 11.6 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 0, 19, and 19 fantasy points in his last 3 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Giancarlo Stanton here versus AJ Alexi. I also like Ryan Mountcastle with a 29% batting advantage over the low-salary pitcher Ranger Suarez. Ryan Mountcastle is batting a .798 OPS versus lefties, and Ranger Suarez, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, giving up a 1.022 OPS versus righties. That's 32% worse than his other pitches. And there's no at-bats versus Suarez yet, but Ryan Mountcastle is 3,600 FanDuel salary, 1,100 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 18, 28, and 0 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Ryan Mountcastle here versus Ranger Suarez. Okay, now a big time value play. I like Matt Verling with a 26% batting advantage over John Means. Matt Verling, he's batting 27% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .907 OPS versus lefties, and John Means is giving up a .703 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Means yet, but I like this pick because Matt Verling is only 2,100 FanDuel salary, only 200 more on DraftKings, projected at 9 fantasy points here tonight. Now he's only averaging 5 fantasy points per game on the season, but he scored 6, 0, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Matt Verling as a high-risk, high-reward value play here versus John Means.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.